Who's gonna take care of you?
Isn't that really unnatural? What's the point of being here?
You'll lead to the extinction of the human race.
That's so selfish.
Ah, stop! Stop! How do you know that you want to have kids? Is it a maternal or a parental instinct of some kind? Is it a rite of passage that you've always wanted to fulfill? Is it social pressure telling you to have kids? Or is it something completely different? See, I have a bit of a confession to make. I don't want to have kids. Zero. None. Zilch. Ever. No kids for me at all. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the child-free movement. This is a really personal subject for me because for as long as I can remember, I never wanted to have kids. And for as long as I can remember, all my life, people have tried to convince me that I don't know what I'm talking about when I say that I don't want to have kids. But before we begin, let's get a couple of things straight. Being child-free is defined as an individual choice not to have children. It's a movement that challenges the presumption that in order to live a good life, one must build a family centered around children. This is different and not to be confused with the term childless, which includes people who may wish to have children but may not otherwise be able to have them. The aha moment came to me when I was a teenager, when I realized that, okay, while I may at some point in my life get married and have a house and all those things, I just didn't want to become a mother. I didn't want to have children. I didn't want to give birth. I didn't want to spend my life raising a kid. It was just not something that I wanted to do. But of course, back then, everybody told me that I would change my mind. And honestly, the fact that everybody was trying to convince me otherwise made me feel like I was the only person in the world, the only woman in the world who didn't want to have kids.
I had no role models growing up. I didn't know anyone who was child-free. The media's representation was so negative that it actually made me not say out loud that I had these feelings myself.
The reason that the child-free community is speaking out is because parenthood is the default. And whenever you have something that's the default, you know, the minority group is going to have to speak out just to make people feel a little bit less alone.
So life went on. I turned 20 and 25 and 30. And while I still knew that I definitely didn't want to have kids of my own accord, I was kind of half expecting for this magical motherly instinct to kick in and tell me that, in fact, I should be having kids right now. That hasn't happened. But something else happened. So the older I get, the more people take me seriously. And the more they realize that when I say I don't want to have kids, I may actually mean it. Instead of saying that I will change my mind, they now say, who's gonna take care of you when you're old? What if you regret it? Oh, that's so selfish. Isn't that really unnatural? So where are you gonna find the meaning of life? So what's the point of you being here? Well, if you keep talking like that, you're gonna lead to the extinction of the human race. That's my favorite.
It's really sad that we can't just let people actually make decisions that are right for themselves.
And you know, I totally agree that there's a lot of people out there, maybe including yourselves, who find there to be so much meaning in having and raising children. And that's totally cool. Good for you. I'm happy for you. It's just not where I find my meaning. And that should also be fine.
Meaning comes from within you. What you generate, what you create, what you exist for is your meaning. I can't put my meaning of life in somebody else's body or existence.
You're complete the day you were born. The life is about you. Everyone else is a secondary character.
I feel very complete right now, and I think that people who need to have children in order to complete themselves really should be figuring out how to complete themselves in therapy.
I think it's selfish to think that children are here to complete you. You are born as a singular individual, and that's really all the completion that you need.
I find my meaning in my work, in the relationships that I have with people other than my potential kids. And the same applies to my legacy, assuming that I even want to legacy, because, you know, when I die, it's kind of irrelevant what I leave behind. But assuming that I wanted to leave a legacy, I would hope for that to be through the work that I leave behind. Some of the thoughts, the trips, the videos, the writings that I leave behind.
I think there are so many things that people give birth to that are not human babies. I've produced and published 3 books. I've done a blog, a podcast. I've created a nonprofit. I'm getting my 2nd master's degree. I think I've created a lot of things that I hope will leave a profound ripple effect to benefit the world.
My legacy is that I have fought for women's rights. I'm a women's rights activist. My legacy is that I've made friends. My legacy is that I've traveled. My legacy is that I am helping people when I can. I don't have to do these things, but I choose to do them. And this is how I want to be remembered. So I will be remembered simply because I existed in this place, in this time, on this planet.
But before we dive deep into debunking some of the common myths around choosing not to have children, let's take it back. I'm talking right back to the 1500s. As early as the 1500s, women in northwestern Europe began to postpone marriage in their mid-20s as opposed to getting hitched in their early teens. This meant that women could work and have greater financial independence as opposed to, devoting themselves to the usual life of homemaking duties. Of course, this newfound economic and social independence meant that some people would just never get married or have kids. In fact, prior to the French Revolution, it is estimated that at least 15 to 22% of the adult population remained single and without children. Well, what if your husband or partner wants to have kids? Well, then we wouldn't be together. I mean, I would never have a kid just to please my partner. That is such an alien, abstract thought to me. Of course, in reality, I have had relationships break down because I didn't want to have kids and they did. And despite really good communication, because I'm very open about this stuff, people change their minds. And that's also fine. So it has led to some heartbreak, it has led to relationships breaking down, and that is part of the price I pay.
I think we get lucky that we found each other and had the same life goal. I think it is important for couples to find out if they, vibe in that regard.
I think I'm looking for a partner who chooses me, for me. So I'm going to keep looking for that. And honestly, I was never born and raised into a family that taught me my sole existence is to be with somebody. My sole existence is to be the best person that I can be.
If you have decided that you're a child-free, it should be non-negotiable for you. The child-free community is rising as we speak. And when you'll find them, it will be amazing. Exhibit A.
With the rise of industrialization, women, and especially women living in larger cities who had access to education and improved standards of living, became more aware of various forms of birth control. By the 1900s, at least 1 in 5 American women born between 1885 and 1915 never had children. Childlessness rates also continued to rise across Western Europe, Canada, and Australia throughout the First World War and Great Depression. However, this all changed after World War II. Following the war, the Western world saw a massive spike in childbirths, giving rise to the generation that we affectionately know as the baby boomers. A lot of this change can be attributed back to a series of government incentives and projects encouraging people to have kids. If you're from the United States, you might be familiar with the GI Bill, which aimed to support returning veterans from World War II and their families with affordable and available mortgages and stipends, covering tuition and expenses for education. The policies are designed to combat slow birth rates and aging populations, with an increase in fertility rates through economic payouts and tax breaks for families. So yes, governments definitely want you to have babies because it's great for their GDP. But this trend was relatively short-lived. By the 1970s, attitudes started changing all over again and birth rates started to slow down once again, returning to pre-World War II levels. This is because we started talking a lot more in mass media about reproductive and sexual rights. The feminist revolution was in full swing. Women suddenly had more access to birth control and were starting to get full-time jobs. And then there's the question of, well, who's going to take care of you when you're old, and aren't you just going to die alone then?
Having a child is no guarantee they will look after you when you're older. In fact, I know many many friends who live in other countries to their parents. So it's not a guarantee. Having a child shouldn't be and isn't a guarantee that they will look after you when you're older.
I'm building a community of love around me, so I don't think that will be much of a problem. I guess if you're not building a community of love around yourself, you only have your children to take care of you.
Hopefully there's a decent government that should be able to take care of us. It's their responsibility. It's no one's child responsibility to do that.
What I'll do is I'll get to live out my old days with friends and animals and non-blood tie family, you know, basically in a commune with friends. That is my big dream, is to set up a place like that where a bunch of us can live together and just have fun. So when people ask me, what about a family? Will you never have a family? I just think that that question comes from a lack of a broad enough understanding of what a family unit can be.
Well, I mean, we have us, we have our cats, we have our family and friends, and for us that is a complete picture. Exactly.
I have, you know, my family, my chosen family, and my faith. So I don't ever feel like I'm actually going to be alone.
And now we come to my favorite takeaway from this video, a notion that most people find so shocking that they instantly go into denial. So don't go into denial on me. The idea that people, women, have a maternal instinct is a hoax. Science says that it doesn't exist. You can Google this, by the way. There's lots of academic papers on the stuff. The belief in the maternal instinct has real power because it's a reinforced shared belief that we have across many different communities all around the world.
If everyone really thought about what they wanted in their life and what would be the right thing for them, we'd have happier people, we'd have happier parents, we'd have happier everyone. So I think it is only, it's only a good thing to have communities that can help people know that they're not alone and to feel supported, especially.
Okay, so here's some of my predictions for what the future holds for the child-free community. And forgive me as I eat this delicious, all plant-based cookie dough. I love cookie dough, it's so good. I really hope you can still take me seriously. Prediction number 1. Don't worry. Humanity will not go extinct. I mean, there's 8 billion of us on the planet today, and the vast majority of that 8 billion number are choosing to have kids. In fact, in the next 30 years, the world population is set to skyrocket to 10 billion people.
The use of fossil fuels and how we are treating the planet will lead to our extinction much faster than me not using my uterus.
There's so much going on in our world that I feel like we need to be supporting one another and not adding to it right now.
We will probably lead to the extinction of every other species on the planet before we are extinct.
My main prediction is that with time, more and more people will feel more comfortable and validated in their choice not to have kids. And I have seen this play out in my own lifetime.
I love that our community is a positive space. It's about lifting all women, especially. I mean, it also has child-free men in, which is great, and it has gender diverse people in, which is amazing. So, you know, I'm shining a light on women's voices, especially because we are the ones who face so much judgment. But the community is filled with so many different types of people, which is just amazing. And it just makes you realize that you're not alone, and we can live happy, fulfilled lives without children. You know, it's absolutely possible.
So what can we do now, apart from just stuffing so much cookie dough down your throat? Well, whether you find this concept still completely alien or you find yourself agreeing with it, either way, I highly recommend browsing through communities like We Are Child Free on Instagram to kind of discover stories and perspectives and really widen your horizons. Or quite simply, you can take some of the information that you've gleaned from this video and help pass it on to help destigmatize, remove the taboo, and debunk some of the myths that surround people's personal and individual choices to be child-free. Oh, and on that note, stop asking people, when are you gonna have kids? It just makes people uncomfortable. It is not a good question. Well, that's it for me on the subject of being child-free. Make sure you subscribe to the Unplugged channel It's a new one, so it could use all the help that it can get. And don't leave here without leaving a comment. I would love to hear your perspective, your story, your views. Did you find anything in this video new or surprising? I'd love to hear from you. All right, well, on that note, stay unplugged and I'll see you in the next one.